so much, Chairman. As you stated, I will refer to the answer to all three questions within the statement I'm about to make. Let me start with Mr. Rawls' question. Well, thank you for the question. The first part, of course, has been answered to a large extent in the last few days. Mr. Lewis no longer works for this authority, and we are no longer paying an agency for his services. It is worth noting that the contract was terminated with immediate effect because of recent performance issues. Mr. Orr makes reference to the Secretary of State, Eric Pickle's recent comments. He was asked a question which was, at best, misinformed, stating that the Council directly employed Mr. Lewis through a service company. We did not. We have been very clear on this issue, and I wish people would listen. Therefore, there has been no abuse of process, and the Secretary of State was unfortunately misled. I wonder why he was asked such a loaded question. Potentially, I could say because there's an election around the corner. We have made it very clear that our policy needs to be flexible in a very competitive market. Our preference is to make a permanent appointment, and that is why at this moment in time we are currently advertising for just that. Finally, in relation to Mr. Orr's comments, I would point out to him and to others asking similar questions. I understand interim appointments need to provide a significant amount of insurance cover in order to provide indemnities to authorities against any claims that be made against them whilst they are working with the authority. In some cases, they require £5 million plus of insurance cover. This is only able to be delivered through these service companies. It is not, my understanding, available through private individuals. For your information, there are a substantial number of interim directors of children's services instructed up and down the country. And I understand that every one of them is through a service company. And they all have to have their own insurance in place. It is impossible to fill a temporary post such as a Director of Children's Services without having this insurance in place. I note Mr. Orr's suggested amendments. I'm not prepared to take these today, but I am prepared to say that they should go to the HR committee, who will be able to look at them in more detail and come back to full council in due course. I'd like to thank the Member of Parliament for Wales for coming to the council chamber today. I note that there was a couple of substantial issues in Parliament today, including Prime Minister's question time and a debate on child abuse, which she could have attended. But she has come here today. Whilst I have the MP in the room, and let me just say from the outset, I found her comments today very reasonable and contrite. I am disappointed with some of the press statements that I see from the said Member of Parliament. I hold in my right hand a copy of a press statement on her website dated 20th of October, which I'm sorry to say is rather misleading and demonstrates a complete lack of understanding of both local government and the policy we are due to debate today. Mrs. Munt criticises the Council on a number of occasions, and that is very disappointing because I have offered meetings to discuss issues with the MP, but she has refused. She will know that we need to take on interim staff from time to time because there is a national shortage of Director of Children's Services, there is a shortage of qualified social workers, and we need people to fill critical posts to protect the best interests of our children and vulnerable people in our society. I'm disappointed in Mrs. Munt's press statement that she says the Council has failed to publish its current policy in relation to pay on its website. Well, I typed in Somerset County Council pay policy into Google. Other websites are available. And it came up as the first item. So I certainly had no problem finding it. And it is clear what the pay policy is. And we have published papers today which show what the pay policy may be, if full council agrees. I'm also concerned about the statements made in relation to the former Interim Director of Children's Services and tax avoidance and tax generally. These practices, whilst we may all look down on them, they are not illegal. Statements from government are one thing. If you're serious about doing something, pass some legislation, and you are the best person in this room to be able to affect change in that way. So please, put forward your private member's bill. I'll support it right now if you have it. Turning back to some other points of the question raised. I can advise that I wrote to the Secretary of State in advance of these actual debates, because I wanted to tell him what was going on in relation to our children's services and the work in relation to Peter Lewis. And he has not contacted me to say anything different than he basically is supporting Somerset County Council. That is why his statement made in the House, I believe, was because they loaded misinformed questions. I'm sorry to say that I think there's been a number of wholly inaccurate press articles, election leaflets in the recent Through North election, which have not brought children's services into a good light. That is disappointing. Some people need to take a good look at themselves. We are all here to serve Somerset's children. Please work with the authority. Please ask questions of the authority. But please don't make statements unless you are 120% sure of their accuracy. And the statements that have been made, unfortunately, have not been. We are happy to work with anybody of any political persuasion this administration.